Right. So today's discussion is on career forecasting. So the use of QiMen to illustrate to illustrate the decision making processes. Now, before we move on to QiMen as well, let me just run through the preliminary slides. This is also for the recording that we normally will take the app from Android or even from Apple. And normally we prefer our setting to be on Chaibu so that at least we are consistent in the way that we run through it. And the source material will be taken from Datuk Joy Yap's material, but also from other materials such as Jerry King as well, very popular Canadian Chinese, and also Master which has been quite an old book by now. Yeah. So these are where the sharing will be cut across all the source materials that we have. Right. Now, as we look into the QiMen application, again, let us remind ourselves what QiMen can do. We are staying on forecasting. So therefore, don't worry about the minutes. We're staying on forecasting, and we're still doing that. Later, perhaps we'll be moving on to strategic execution, or feng shui, or destiny analysis, but not really on spiritual side of the things. Yeah, as it is. Now, when we look into career forecasting, actually in career forecasting, the preferred choice would be the Pachi. The Pachi destiny analysis will still be the preferred choice. So whenever we can get the date of birth and the time, and especially when the asker would like to seek advice, the natal chart is the better source material. And of course, when we are dealing with outsiders or when we're dealing with a question that is more temporal in nature, then QiMen will come to play. So QiMen is best for what we call the absence of the natal chart, or even if not the absence, at least ephemeral. So ephemeral means more temporary. Temporary in things like, oh, I got a job interview. I have a job interview coming up next week, Tuesday. What will the outcome be? Therefore, this is a job interview to which, of course, Pakchi cannot help. So the Pakchi chart cannot help. This will be more temporal in nature. Will I get a promotion? Will I lose my job? So these are the things that are more detailed in nature and more short-term in nature. You can see that they're more event-based. Therefore, the career outcomes QiMen is best for events. But if you're looking for long-term paths, we're looking for the long-term strategic way, then of course Pachi will come to play, right? Especially when looking to which industry, what are the type of jobs, and can I start my own business? So these are the three typical type of questions that has been asked. And here I will take an actual chart of a person to which I have received a question, and so I would like to reply that via this video recording. So as you look into the steps in determining the career choice, again, just like what we have done time and time again, over in the past, we will come up with the same thing. Step number one is always to determine the structure. So therefore, the first question is, what is the structure of the person? To answer the question, what is the structure, let's take a look into this natal chart of a person. Female, born in 14th of June 1973, born at night, 8:35. And so I'm sure you know the drill by now. We've been doing this for a few times. And of course, we are getting the hang of how we read a chart. The day master is always the pivotal point. And so the day stamp will represent the day master. And here, this is a sin metal. It's a sin metal. As you look into the beginning of where we start off with the sin metal day master, then what do we do? What do we do? What are the checklist questions that we normally would ask? We normally go through the grading, determine the strength of the day master. And the strongest element on the natal chart is the man stem. The man stem represents the strong force of the element that we have here for this day master. And so here we can see that number one, this is a Sin day master born in the month of the horse. And I'm sure you will know the month of the horse is the peak for what? What is the season and what is the peak of it? That's right, huh? That's right. Obviously, this is summer. So therefore, Sin metal born in summer is yin a yin metal day master born in the heat of summer is void, no? Is void, is weak. Therefore, you can see that the fire is too strong. The fire is very, very strong because this is heat. So therefore, immediately the warmth of the chart is high. Therefore, this is a hot chart. Hot chart because it's summer. Dry chart, dry and hot chart. That would be the first impression that we get. So the day master is weak. But of course, the second question to ask is whether it is rooted. Is it rooted? Is there rooting? There is rooting. So therefore, there is rooting and there is penetrating. Therefore, rooting and penetrating. So in that case, it has some degree of strength. But more often than not, the season is like 80%, 80% of it. But the rooting would then indicate that it can survive better. Now, the concept of rooting is more like if a tree is rooted, when the wind blows, it may stay put. Therefore, it has a better chance of survival, better chance of withstanding the externality. But still, it is metal born out of season. So born out of season, and it is rooted somewhat. Generally, it is very weak. And so when it is a weaker day master, then we often stereotype. But bear in mind that a few things comes to mind is that the favorable element will then be itself, which is then metal. So we'll consider metal to be favorable. And of course, the element that produces metal, the resource element, very crucial, important is the resource, which you can then find that it has. It has resource element. It has resource element on both sides. Earth. And earth is strong in summer because fire produces earth. So therefore, the resource element is strong and the resource element produces the day master. Right? So therefore, this is both left and right that comes into mind. So overall, the day master is not very, very weak, not very, very weak, but it is rooted and it is supported by resource, produced by resource. Therefore, it is still weak, but not as weak. So in a rating of 1 to 10, maybe about 5 or maybe about 4, and therefore it's quite balanced to a certain degree. So for today's topic on career, that will be quite something useful as well. Now the useful god. There are 3 types of useful gods, Yongshen. The first type has to do with the temperature. And if this is a hot chart, the useful god will then be water. And straight away we can see that the useful god is both elemented here, Yongshen. Right? It will be both water. That means in terms of the Kui water as well as the Ren water. But this chart is absent of Ren water. So if it is absent, it's absent. Therefore, there's no affinity, there is no inclination, and you shouldn't recommend water. You shouldn't recommend rainwater. If it's not there, it's not there. Don't recommend it. Therefore, then what is remaining is the Kui water. So in this hot summer day, in this blistering summer chart, the Kui water will be useful. It's going to be a very useful element. Whenever it comes, it's going to cool down the temperature. And then with this Kui water, it will then wash and polish the sin metal and make it shine. On the other hand, we also find Qi earth, which is the indirect resource, to be quite a useful element the same. And there are lots of earth on this chart, lots and lots of earth. Now, earth, of course, as you know, the more earth that you have, well, one thing armpit smelly lah. Okay, man. More earth that you have means you are pretty much a hoarder. You like to keep a lot of things. A bit more slow and procrastinating. So this day master is a little bit more slower in its development. Therefore, now I'm not saying that the person is slow, but the person learns slowly because earth producing metal takes a long time. So for metal to develop, it takes a very long time for the production cycle. All right. So first, sorry, is there anyone asking? Sorry. Uh, sorry, if anyone is, sorry, is anybody talking? Okay, sorry, if you want to ask question, just unmute yourself, yeah, because I think that was an accident. All right, now, so that's it. We look into number one, the structure. So we have the structure, and the structure here indicates that this person is uh, is of course a seven killing structure. It's a seven killing structure, and of course a sub-chi is then indirect resource. But the indirect resource is more notable to be a useful god. And while the seven killing is overbearing, overbearing seven killing. Now, seven killing is warrior, and overbearing seven killing is lonely. Therefore, this person may be may have a sense of competitiveness that may bring it to lack self-esteem whenever it feels being challenged. Kiasula would be to describe how Singaporeans would describe the sense of competition and the sense of it into the kiasulas. So therefore, but that's the structure. The first structure is seven killing. Seven killing. Right, that's the first issue. All right, but nonetheless, of course, the useful God that is also exists, that is the indirect resource, comes into play. As is. Okay, now besides the structure, we also have established what represents the favorable element. So favorable element is useful because why? Because as we want to look for career, we want a career that we can work and operate within the favorable element. That would be it. And of course, we also comes through to the part where we have your strength of the day master as well. So we then begin to outline the three things. Okay, now usually we come back to the earlier question. The earlier question, of course, is can I start my own business? Can I start my own business? The answer to whether you can start your own business lies into the four types of structure that is often very better or suitable for your running your own business. Indirect wealth, indirect resource, hurting officer, and eating god. So if we see any of these four in the structure, in the month, in the career palace, then that may be a good indicator that the answer is yes. The answer is yes. So this person, if this person asks for, can I start my own business? Can I start my own business? And therefore, we can see one thing. We can see that not really. The answer is no. Generally, no, because the predominant chi is seven killing, and the heaven stem is a direct resource. Okay, there's a direct resource into the path. But that this person has this longing or feeling to start their own business. Now that is why sometimes we need to ask the question, why do you think the asker asked this question? Why do you think? Because there is a sense of perhaps there's a thinking to it. But here we may also want to explore the age of the asker. This asker born in 1973 is not young anymore. The person has moved from uh, to the next luck pillar. And so here, based on the luck pillar, the person has experienced 3 years of metal, which is positive, which is good, because this is a sin day master where the metal element is weak, the self element is weaker, and therefore going through your own favorable element that will be favorable. But now the person has crossed over, the person has crossed over to a new luck pillar, which is water. So this change in the luck pillar will be profound, a very profound change, because 3 decades of metal now moving to the next 3 decades of water. And water will be positive because water will be positive. Why? Because essentially water is the element that will cool down this hot chart. And of course, water is also the useful god. And so here we can perhaps understand why the asker is asking, because the asker is now experiencing a change or transition in the person's life, especially now coming into the third year, the year of the Ren water some more, the year where the water luck is the Ren water. And Ren water is absent. And as the Ren water is absent in the chart, this Ren water coming in will be upsetting, will be very upsetting. It can be read as a chart where good news will come from bad events. So this person may experience something negative to begin with. Because why? Because this is an element not in the natal chart being introduced to the chart, and it's hurting officer. Red water represents hurting officer. So this change may also be physiological, some hormonal change. So hormonal change that can result in an increasing sense of impatience, because hurting officer is one that it becomes increasingly more extroverted, more challenging convention, becoming more unhappy with the current scenario, and therefore that change begins to happen. So the person is then asking the question as to why should I move job? No? What have I been doing in my life? So therefore, that kind of event will take place. So hence, that is the question. That is why this asker is now presenting the question. Should I do business? And so here we do see that there are other types of stars coming in, which may also be the hurting officer. So the person is entering into the hurting officer luck pillar. The person is entering into the hurting officer luck pillar, and the person has an indirect resource in the chart, and therefore this person is now feeling that those elements are increasingly useful, and therefore may want to step into the career choice. Okay, so that's where we need to be able to appreciate. But there's one thing that you can see: the person has no wealth chart. Wood is completely absent in this chart. No wood whatsoever. The thing about the absence of wood, and why wood may be somewhat necessary a bit, is because this chart has too much earth. So we need some wood to be able to control some of the earth, to actually grip the earth in the area. And therefore, this may mean that the person has no strong affinity on the wealth luck. And that also means the person is likely not to be an emperor. So we take a passage from the older manuscript when it comes into this. Therefore, I'm not so excellent in translating, but it just means that to determine whether a person has any official luck, any employment luck, we do look into the officer star. We look into the officer star. We also look into the resource star. Now, it is a misconception, especially for culture, that to be wealthy, one looks for the wealth star. Actually, one can say that the resource star is the far more important element. The resource star will be very useful. In a way, if you look into the accounting, wealth may represent assets, but resource represents revenue. And so you may want to ask the question, which element will contribute to greater wealth, assets or revenue? And therefore, one can say that you may want revenue because revenue means it's a constant cash flow coming your way. But of course, if you want to be wealthy, you want to have revenue. I mean, when you do business, you want to have revenue. Okay, once you have revenue, then of course, you later in your life, you then have assets to manage. That's it. So in that context, that so to be wealthy, uh, it's not the asset style that you should be looking for, it's the revenue style that you should be looking for. Yeah, as it is. And so here in this ancient manuscript, it talks about the same thing, that to read whether the person has official luck, you look into the official style, you look into the resource style as well. Now, if there is no officer style, no resource style, then of course the desire to be an official will not be great. The person has no affinity to achieve high position in an organization or a status. So the person is not inclined to actually spend more time. And on the other hand, if the person has too many officer stars, too many, then the person may have a strong desire to be an officer, hungry to be an officer. Doesn't necessarily means will be one, but at least you will have this feeling of trying to achieve. And then this way we can try to see what is the next step that we can then take itself. Okay, so the favorable elements for formal employment will be the following: direct officer, direct resource on, oh sorry, I think I make a bit of a typo on the fourth element, right? It's not direct resource, but sorry, direct wealth. Huh? Direct, sorry, so it's direct wealth and not direct resource. Sorry. Okay. All right. So, okay. So therefore, we have direct officer, direct resource, direct wealth, and seven killing. Now, seven killing is a little bit of a wild card because actually, seven killing makes better self-employed. Sole proprietor, own business. But it can also be a warrior, which can also be suitable for employment. Therefore, there are times where people put seven killing to own business, some put that to employment. No? But here I'll put it to employment. Why? I'll try to justify it later. So the first three, of course, is the three pressures. And of course, here we may be reminded that ancient manuscript during the Ming Dynasty, Tang Dynasty, uh, they always value the imperial exam, and they always look favor for the three pressures. So the three pressures is always the direct officer, the direct resource, and the direct wealth. And so for these three represents uh, direct officer would then represents, of course, the ability to manage, the ability to command respect, and therefore direct officer is very compliant, works very well in direct officer makes a person works very well in middle office. Middle office. Middle office are officers where we look into compliance, regulation, internal audit, control, human resource, whereby direct officer plays a strong supporting role and of course makes a person an excellent employee. A person, middle office means you bring and connect the back office and the front office together. So therefore, direct officer is a star favorable for employment. Direct resource would then be one that is best to put into research, to look into information gathering. And information is the new goal, where we have data science, we have R&D, we look into research and so on. So therefore, the discovery of new things, newer inventions. So therefore, that's direct resource. And usually, of course, we may put direct resource also into front office. Huh? We put them to front, they also work very well in the back offices. But because they can also be both front and back. But for the front office normally deals with sometimes deal with customer, deals with the frontliners, and of course the one that can micromanage and they can put in is the direct. All right, so here we have the three: direct officer, resource, and wealth that normally governs a. But now let's take a look into seven killing, the odd one out. And we may do that because here this person is a seven killing. Now, seven killing is not really a team player. They are mostly lone ranger. So if we want to have a seven killing employee, normally it would be good if it is individual tasks and the person has to carry out. And the thing about seven killing is that they don't really like to manage people. They can be in a command area, but they rather do it themselves. Seven killing, if you have a seven killing manager, a seven killing is a warrior. So even if the person is a king, this is the king that would still fight on the front line with their fellow soldiers because he's a born warrior and will likely die with a sword in the hand. Therefore, that makes that makes seven killing a remarkable leader. People respect seven killing, willing to follow a seven killing, because a king that is able and willing to fight on the front line with their fellow comrades is a leader to follow. But then, of course, a one that prefers to do the job themselves may also means to go solo. So that is why seven killing is good for employee to nurture, but also good as your own business. But own business, not in partnership, but just self-employed. Therefore, that would be the lone warrior kind of people as well. And so for here, we do see that this person, okay, so now as we combine everything together, the favorable element is water. So the favorable element we determine is water. The favorable element can also be metal. But now we can see that the person is entering into a water luck pillar for the next 3 decades. Hence, the person is asking for what the person can do, and it appears that water may be the favorable element, therefore entering into a water-based industry. So water-based industry uh, pertains to wisdom. This person is a teacher, so as being a teacher, being very resourceful, and of course moving into things related to water-based tourism, traveling, services industry would represent an industry that a person could find favor in. Therefore, that's where we come into the career aspects. Okay, but now that we have look into the first part. So the first part is to look into the Pachi of the person. Now the next part is to now explore QiMen. And when we do that, why use QiMen?
David,
Yes, yes,
sorry, 1 minute.
sure.
Water is the useful god is not the favorable element because water is metal produced water is output. So output is unfavorable. But water is useful god. That's why we use water. Is it?
No, not necessarily. Okay, not the okay, okay. I understand where you're coming from. You're saying that this person is a weekday master. So weekday master means earth and metal would be good, correct?
Yep.
That's what you mean.
Yep.
Therefore, the rest are unfavorable. Fine. But when we look into the chart, we don't want to have it's not so black and white, not so binary that we want to cut it out. Because here, the
Mm.
person does have water in the chart, which is represented by EG here. And water is the
Yep.
useful god. Therefore, this person is not so weak that cannot use water. is not so weak. Therefore, water can be used. Water can be used.
Okay.
Water can be. I think I know where you're coming from. Because if you just go by the traditional favorable and unfavorable, but here the chart is too hot. Mm. Okay,
Yep.
so we
Okay.
start
Thank you.
we start from there. We start from there, but we must not box it up like that. We must be able to see the spectrum and then see to what degree water can be used. Therefore, this chart is hot. That means the fire is strong. The fire is very strong. And when the fire is very strong,
Okay.
this person has been in a very controlled environment than young. Very controlled environment into one time. Okay, and
Okay.
furthermore,
Thank you.
this person is born at night. When this person is born at night, all the thing fire can be seen one. All whatever thing fire in the hidden stem is visible. The hidden stem is visible, so cannot hide. So the seven killing all is one part again. So it's quite all right. Okay, therefore, what? So in a way, you can say that it's the person is also entering into a water luck pillar. Also entering the water luck pillar. So the luck pillar is there, and it's a useful god, and it can actually be used. But again, this natal chart has no run water at all, and so run water is coming in big time this year and also this 10 year, and that actually has uh, a very rough, a very unhappy beginning. It's a very unhappy beginning. Possibly the person is asking this question because the person is now experiencing a changing career, changing environment, very upset, and possibly lost the job. Therefore, will now want to find other things to do. That's why the person is asking this question. It could be like that. It could be losing a job doesn't mean you get fired, but you yourself may play a role in getting yourself out from it. Right. But now let's take a look into achievement. Now, achievement, of course, is remember we always prefer Pachi. When advising career, always start with Pachi. If the asker give you the birth date and so on. But now of course, when you want to look for things like again, as I mentioned, oh, I got a job interview next week. So will I get a job or not? Now Pakcik will find it a bit harder to explain things like that because Pakcik is your natal chart, is your DNA lah, it's like your DNA, like your medical record. You talk about your overall long-term picture. So it doesn't talk about next week, it doesn't talk about next month and so on. So if we want something now closer to more temporal, then we come into the elements. Or maybe we want to look into the other issue. So again, as always, the day stamp is the asker, always start with a point as usual. And now here it depends on two things. One can be current situation. So we want to look into current situation before we then talk about the new situation. The current situation is somewhat a validation. Now, I would like to emphasize on validation because it's an important scientific step. I know it's very hard to say that what we're doing is scientific. Meta science, meta science. So it's still somewhat. So scientific means that before, because sometimes when you use QiMen, you are giving advice to people. And when people take your advice, they commit. And if they make the wrong decision, they suffer losses in terms of money, relationship, and everything. It can be very scary when people come to ask you things like, should I marry this guy or not? You are making a decision that will alter the person's entire life in the future. Career can also be something similar to that life changing kind of a question. Yeah. So validation, of course, means you ask a few questions to check and see whether is everything on the right track. That's what doctors do. Oh, you have this. Let me ask you a few questions. Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you? No, you ask a few questions so that when you validate yourself, then you have a greater confidence that you can then move on to give advice. So that's what I did. That's what I did in the earlier. And it's also here the same thing likewise. Huh? So the validation question, of course, is the boss is in the year stamp, the colleagues are on the month stamp, and the subordinates and employees are on the hour stamp. And therefore here, if the person is asking question about the current environment, then we can try to figure out what kind of boss the person is having, what kind of colleagues, what kind of hour stamp. So in order to get a better picture about how this person is asking. In a way, it's more like, why are you asking this question? Okay, now next, of course, we then want to look into the new situation, and that will be, of course, the job itself, which is open door. So open door is the job itself. And then, of course, we have the two, which is then the executive position, somebody with authoritative power. All right. And there's something extra, something extra. When forecasting career, the location of the subject's birth year step, the birth year step in achievement is valuable. The birth year step. So this ask if you can get if you can get. So here, if this is the asker, the birth year step is Kueh water. Okay, so this asker natal chart birth year stamp is Kueh water. So this is not from QiMen, not from the QiMen chart, but it is from the natal chart. And this natal chart is now going to be superimposed superimposed to it. Therefore, we got a Kueh water. And so now we will say, okay, you're Kueh water. If you have, if you have. And usually, of course, even if you don't have, birth year stamp means you ask the person which year they are born. If the person says, I'm not sure which year I'm born, basically this person is only testing you. Don't want to give you information and see whether achievement works or not. So anyway, if you don't have, then never mind. If you have, then proceed with it. Okay, so in that case, as you know, you shall plot the chart based on the asker. And again, remind yourself on the location. The location will play a role. Location gives you a time, and then of course you have your internal plate and your external plate to actually provide the time. Especially when they talk about, will I get a job soon? Am I able to change my job? Is it going to be fast or is it going to be slow? Which month? And therefore the location will come to play. Yeah. And so now we look into the achievement and then we plot a particular chart. Okay, so as we plot this chart, we need to see where is the asker. So the asker's birth year stamp. So the birth year stamp is Kueh water. And Kueh water will be here. So Kueh water will be here. Together with the two into one. Okay, so therefore at least we know that the Kueh water is there on the Kun Palace 2. Therefore we'll keep a record. Then of course we'll move on to the next question. The askers. So now we can see here the asker's step. Okay. But again, this is where sometimes we see that there is a confusion between these two. It's like how because there are two, you see. Therefore, which is which? But what are we talking about? Well, never mind. We'll just take it as it is. We'll take the asker stamp, which is your think fire. And where do you put that think fire? I can see somebody says southwest. So think fire is in southwest. All right. So think fire is in southwest, which is your Xinhua 4. All right, very good. So we have it there. And then, of course, we now look into where the career is, which is open door. And therefore, the open door. So the open door, it represents your Kun 8, and your Kun 8 represents into the. So the career is in the open door. Northeast. All right, so there are a few things here to come to mind. Uh, we will try to have the position. So once we have the position now, as usual, we get a position and we kind of represents a few things in mind. Let's focus on, it depends on the question. So the question will be more like, I mean this I mean I'm in teaching and now I want to know what new job can I do to make money. Therefore, they want to talk about potential chance of changing a job, changing a job. Okay, the first few things, open door represents employment, job. Basically, that's where it is. So we can see that right now, when this asker asked the question on the 8th of July, this asker ask in the yin cycle. It is a yin cycle. So yin cycle, the internal plate for yin cycle is the following. The open door happens to be in Kenkwa 8, which at the moment will represent the external plate. External plate. And the month of Ox is January. Therefore, in the first answer to the question, will I change my job very soon? Will I change my job very soon? The answer would feel like no, because it's an external plate. And it falls into Kenkwa 8, which is January. And so very likely, if you do get a chance to change your job, it will very likely be in January. All right, so that is the one part. Let's look at it. And of course, into the next part, we look into the star. What is the star? The star is advisor. And here, of course, we know that red means auspicious. So there'll be a lot of auspicious stars, except that it is also in death and emptiness. Yeah. So there's a death and emptiness there itself. And therefore, as we look into the industry representation, what would be the industry representation for the advisor? The industry representation for the advisor, or under Dato Joy Yap's is the assistant, will then be in the representation for things in science and technology, written equipment, timber, design, and planning. So those are the various industry the person is in. So at the moment, this person is actually a teacher. The asker is in a teaching profession. And to ask whether the person could find a job in the right industry. What industry could we open the door to? Therefore, we can find that this is the industry representation. Writing equipment, timber, design, planning. So perhaps being a teacher, writing equipment, design, planning, science and technology could be an aspect, an area that could provide. They could provide the clue into where the chances of the luck will come in. So we look into the advisor, the star, and for the advisor, we then see where the representation lies. What does each of them lies? And also, if we can remember how we can explore the use of the star advisor, the star assistant, will then be prosperous in summer. Will then be prosperous in summer. And right now, we are in the summer month. Right now, when the asker was asking, the month is July. Because when you look into stars, the grading of the stars lies on the season. And so we are now, right now, we are now in the today, or when the plot is charted, the plot is charted in summer. Therefore, assistant star, destructor star is prosperous. So it's very prosperous. Then we can then see that that the star assistant or advisor here will be prosperous. So the outcome looks favorable. And of course, we can see that the deity is partner. So therefore, there is a partner star, Liu He, Liu He, 6 combination, a partner star comes in. Therefore, it might result in the person having opportunity to start a business that may involve some help from the partnership that comes from it. Okay, but here, let's take a look into the validation point of view. In a validation point of view, the year stamp represents the boss. And here in this chart, where is the boss? Where is the boss at the moment? Where is the boss? The boss is in northwest, which is facing the death door, which actually represents, and of course, a lot of black tortoise, which has to do with rumors, petty. In this context, so in this context, the then the validation question is that can I? Then you can just say to the asker, dear asker, can I just ask a few things just to see that currently your environment at the moment is not very good with your boss. You can feel that your current career is well death is at its ends rope. And here it may mean that the boss has a very negative perception about you, possibly due to rumors, due to petty people due to incidents that your boss may have preferred to listen to the stories of other colleagues that may have contributed to how the boss have a negative perception on you. Therefore, that's why there's this sense of unhappiness, a sense that you would like to now consider exploring changing your job. So that might be it. And then, of course, we look into the colleague. Where is the colleague? The colleague is in the Yi Wood. Where is Yi Wood? The colleagues are. So the colleagues are there. And the colleagues are white tiger, which means very confrontational, hostile environment, dispute. The door is dispute. Tian Zhong, which is impulsive. So combined together, it may show that there might be some current event going on. There must be some kind of an argument that must have happened. Very hostile, confrontational, very confrontational colleagues that has entered into some dispute, and somehow your boss tends to cite the other person's story better, therefore resulting in this particular scenario that you may be in. And your subordinates, where is the subordinate? The subordinate is in the Keng, and the Keng is subordinate star is here. Tianyin, rest dog, basically good subordinates, overall good subordinates. But Tian Kong, emptiness. Therefore, the subordinates are not, well, like subordinates, of course, they are not as powerful or as strong, but they tend to be able to provide some information to support you. Therefore, this person may have some, but then death and emptiness are very weak. So not very strong support about the support. Okay, so this also in a way you can see that all these things plays together. So when you put QiMen together with the parts, when you put them together, we can sense that the story jive together. So as mentioned earlier, having an element that you don't have in your natal chart as a lack of affinity entering, usually the beginning is one of conflict. Beginning is one of upset. Therefore, it can be something that is now causing it. So when we read the chart, we can then say that we can try to validate, ask the correct question into it as well. Okay, so therefore we can validate, and after validate, then we can now consider what is the likely chance for the person. So in a way, in conclusion, as we come in, Can this person get a job? Yes, the person can get a job. Will it be soon? No, it will not be soon because it falls into the external plate. And what kind of job should I be looking for? The kind of job you should be looking for. The kind of job you should be looking for. Remember, we prefer the Pachi answer. We prefer the Pachi answer first. Yeah, water that taps on into your strength, which lies into your internal resource. So indirect resource taps on this because this is one of your useful gods, and also tap onto your fasa, which is your EG, which is your. So EG is about creativity, script writing, introvert, is an introvert. Therefore, the job is both introvert. Both of them are introverted job. So it doesn't involve frontline talking to people, doing so not really doing business lah. But if doing business, self-employed would be good. Freelance agent into introverted, into producing output, something to do with output. And the output may be water-based team output style, like input engine, like script writing, preparing materials. So maybe this person is a teacher, and so as a teacher, this person may want to explore doing something else near to teaching but not teaching, such as content provider, such as publication of books. So the person can move on into publication, content providing, uh, providing support, and these are all still very related to tapping to your structure, tapping to your useful gods, and then of course embracing the water luck element that comes in. And then of course, as we also look into the earlier, as we come into the star, we can also say that the advisor is also on things like writing equipment, table science and technology, and it can come in from there. Therefore, finally, we can then come to a conclusion, or we can lead on to the final part and say that yes, if you want to consider changing your job, you have the opportunity to change. You have the opportunity to change. In a way, your luck pillar is here. You have now entered into a new luck pillar. And so the discomfort is causing you to change. And so that's why you are asking this question. You are wanting to change. And I can understand why you want to change, because your current environment has no longer become very friendly to you. Your boss may not support you. Your colleagues are increasingly somewhat hostile. And they also fit into the hurting officer narrative. It fits into the hurting officer luck that's coming in. You are hurting the officer in a way, challenging the convention, therefore a bit more rebellious into that sense. And therefore, yep, you'll change. But maybe not so fast, because here you do have to consider that it is so very likely you will get a job next year January, but in the meantime do work on advisor and partner, indicating that through network. Therefore, to be successful in changing your job and your environment, you need to tap on to your network. So continue to advertise yourself, continue to keep talking about this to as many people as possible, because you are very likely to get a job via the referral of somebody that you know. Right? It may be a bit difficult for the present moment because you do have death and emptiness, but the long run will be still favorable nonetheless. All right. So
David,
yes,
one question. So the job is in the open door and there's an emptiness there. So it doesn't mean that she has a 50% chance of getting the job.
yeah, in a way, it's like 50% discount
That's
lah,
what it
or
means.
weakness. Yeah, correct. Therefore, it's still going to be positive still, but not so easy lah. Uh, that
Mm.
means the success don't come so easy lah. That's what it means. Yeah.
Okay. If no
Right?
emptiness, then it's almost a guarantee you will get the job lah.
Yes, far stronger to get a job. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Huh? The Asker would counter Earth at northeast. the Asker Wood. You're talking about you're talking about the Asker Wood, countering in a way the Ting Master countering, countering part. Yes. That part you can read a bit about that. The element that counters it, the wood to controlling it, as it is. So that part is also some. Okay. All right. So I think so. This is the summary for a bit more of career forecasting. Even though this is a achievement series, but it is very important to begin with Pak Cik nonetheless, to always provide the context of setting the priority of how the consultation should be done. Okay, right. So I think that's all the time that we have today. So we'll wrap it up. And if anything, then we'll continue on the chat. So if not, I'll see you next week then, if that is fine for everybody. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, David. Yes.
Okay, pleasure.
Thank you, David. Good night,
Okay, good night,
everyone.
good night, good night, everyone.